Welcome back to the channel. It's time to do an oil change and regular checkup services on this L322. So let's get started. The first things you want to do is give the vehicle some height. So we got the vehicle running at standard height, as you can see. You want to go ahead and raise it. As you can see, it's raising. You want to go all the way up. That'll give you more height underneath. Vehicle's in off-road mode. Once it's raised fully, you want to go ahead and open up the hood or the bonnet, and that will put it in a service mode so it doesn't lower on you as you're underneath. Once you have the truck raised to the proper height, you'll need a creeper, piece of cardboard, old blanket, what have you, something to get underneath and keep clean. You need a pan to catch the oil, and what I'm using is a 13mm socket with a wrench, or a ratchet actually. You can use a wrench, use a ratcheting wrench, but it's a 13mm drain plug on these trucks. Once you are underneath the vehicle, there are two shields that you will need to remove. There's one in the front here, so you will need to remove some bolts and screws. Sometimes these do get changed depending on where you might have had the oil change last time. They're metric, 10mm. I've seen some 8mm, but most of the time they are 10mm bolts. I'm going to flip the camera here underneath. So this is the shield underneath. You will have to remove that to access the filter. There should be another shield behind it. Mine is missing that shield. Last time I had the oil change at an oil change place, they never put it back on. Once you have the back shield removed, with same bolts being here, 10mm here, few on the back. Again, mine is missing. Once you have that back shield off, you have the access to the drain plug, which is here on the passenger side. You can see the front axle here, or the differential. If you look towards the passenger side, here is a 13mm drain plug for the oil pan. Go ahead and loosen that, put a pan underneath of it. You want to grab some rags so you don't make a mess on the floor. So let's go ahead and loosen that up, let the oil drain as we're working on the front shield, or you can do them all at the same time, have all the shields off. You can access the oil filter without removing the front shield, but it's a messy deal. I'd recommend removing it and then obviously replacing it once you're done. So I have the front shield off. To get the front shield off, you do have to remove the hook cover that's in the front, which is basically just a snap-in at the bottom. So you undo these tabs, remove that center cover. You do have to undo these bolts here. They're 10mm also up top on the front valance. You don't have to completely remove it, but you have to undo these bolts. You can access these 10mm bolts here, which bolts the front of the front shield under the truck. You can reach them from the bottom with a ratcheting wrench or an air wrench, but if you're using a straight socket or a gun like I am, it's easier just to undo these bolts, slide this down so you can access them easily. And once you have that, the whole shield will come down. Once you have both of your shields removed underneath, again, I'm upside down, so this will be a little backwards for you maybe. But once you have the access shield removed, if you look through the driver's side of the motor, there is your oil filter right next to the crank pulley on the left side of the engine. So we will need a tool to remove that, and we'll need another drain pan. We have the oil draining here underneath. You can plug that up and use the same drain pan here, unless you got two of them like I do. You can use a separate pan as that's draining. and loosen up the oil filter, because there will be oil coming from there. To get your oil filter off, you will need an oil filter wrench. You could try it by hand. Sometimes if they've been on there a while, they will not come off by hand. So here's a tool you might use. Here's a cup style oil filter wrench. This will fit right onto the oil filter. You can attach your extension like this one here right to it, ratchet on the end. You can get it off that way. I like using this tool. This is a grip style. As you turn it, as you turn it, this will squeeze in, grab the oil filter, and spin it off that way. Again, both of these will attach to an extension. You will need a longer extension on this, and that'll attach to this, just like so. Ratchet on the end, and you can spin the oil filter off. Once you have it loose, you can get it by hand. So you can access the filter here, right on the left side of the engine. Here's the tire, and if you go right underneath here, here is your access. I have the filter off here, right through the frame here. You can reach. Once you have it loose with the tool, you can spin it off by hand. You do want to have a pan underneath. I have two of them here. One's still under the drain plug from the oil pan. I have an extra one here, right under where the filter goes, so that'll catch the oil dripping from there. You want to have some extra rags. That's just the nature of this. Once you loosen up the filter, it has nowhere to go but to drip on the frame and to go in the pan here, and you can wipe that off afterwards once you're done. So again, you want to have some rags so you don't make a big mess. Try to control that at least. So let's go ahead and let this drain for 15-20 minutes. Ideally, if you're in a hurry, you can go ahead and plug it up once it's done, but I will go ahead and let this drain, and we'll put a new filter on it, and we'll go ahead and put the drain plug on the oil pan, and then we'll fill it with fresh oil. Once you have the oil filter off the vehicle, you want to flip it over and make sure that there's a rubber seal here. Sometimes they tend to get stuck to the engine block, and they'll come out of the filter housing here and stay stuck to the engine block. Sometimes you don't realize that. You put a new filter on, now you got double gaskets in there, and that'll cause a leak. In my case, it stays where it should be, but I have seen that in many cases where this will get stuck to the block itself and come out of the filter here and then stay stuck onto the block. You don't see that. You put a new filter on right on top of it, and that has another gasket, and that will never seal right, and that'll cause an oil leak and possibly an engine failure, which I have seen. So you want to make sure the gasket comes off. I have a new filter here. I like to go ahead and prime the filter, meaning I will add oil to this and fill it up. Reason being, as you first start, after the oil change, it's going to kind of run dry as this fills up and absorbs the oil. Also, what you want to do is lubricate the seal on the oil filter so it doesn't tear as you're spinning this filter on to the engine. We're ready to go ahead and put this back on the vehicle. We'll spin this on. Clockwise is on, counterclockwise is off, just like a regular screw. We have our new oil filter in. We have our drain plug, the 13mm drain plug, tightened. I'd recommend filling the vehicle with oil first, running it, and make sure there's no leaks before we put the shields back on. You go ahead and fill with new oil. I'm using Shell at this time. I'm not going to recommend any oil. The L322s, as far as Land Rover goes, they recommend just conventional 5W30 oil. I've run synthetic in this, synthetic blend, conventional. Never noticed really any difference. So at this time, being summer, I'm just going to run conventional oil in it. What you will need, obviously, on the left side of the engine, there's an oil cap here, counterclockwise. It will come off. You need some type of a funnel. That's the only way you're not going to make a mess. Let's go ahead and put some fresh oil in it. Another tool that does come in handy, I have one of these here. It screws right onto the bottle. And you can also use these instead of a funnel. So this is a great tool to pour your oil in. This fits on your standard size quart or even a gallon. So you can pour it in without a funnel. Has a couple different thread sizes. As you can see, it'll fit you basically any size oil quart to pour it into the vehicle, so you don't need a funnel with that. That's a nice tool to have. I'll put a link to all the parts that were used or you should use that makes your life easier in the description. I've added about 7.5 quarts to the system here. So at this point I've checked the dipstick and it shows a little bit over minimum. I want to go ahead and start the vehicle at this time. It has no oil pressure gauge, so you want to let it run for a few seconds. And you want to go ahead and shut it off. Make sure there's no oil light or anything like that at this point. Vehicle off, we can check the dipsticks. We can check the oil dipstick and add accordingly. And to fill the whole system in this, it took about 8.5 quarts complete. So at this point, I've started the vehicle, waited for a minute or two, checked the dipstick. I'm at max, right where I like it. And now we'll go ahead and take a look at the underneath again, make sure there's no leaks or anything. And at this point, we can go ahead and install the shields underneath back on. Degreased everything. Then I undercoated some of the metal components with underbody coating. Definitely something you don't have to do. That's just something I like to do. Since I'm in the Midwest, the vehicle sees a lot of salt. I want to keep it rust free for as long as I can. So I've undercoated it. Now we're ready to go ahead and put the bottom shields back on. Again, I'm missing one. You will have two that are supposed to be there. I don't think I need to explain where any of the screws goes or anything like that. It's pretty much self-explanatory where everything goes. They're 10mm screws or bolts. Just go ahead and install it right back on. Remember, the two front here and two on the other side. Once you have that, these can go back on the front balance, and the front cover on the hook will go back on. So at this point, the vehicle is ready. The last step that I like to do is put an oil sticker in the window so you can keep track of the miles. So stay tuned. We'll be doing more repair work, maintenance work to these L322s. They're great trucks. I love them. We'll keep them. Let's keep driving them. I thank you for watching.